Thank God I'm up here. Never thought I'd get Chris off. Yeah. You know, they told me last night, you know, don't let Chris MC this thing. You know what? I was all worried about having to speak for an hour. Now I only have to speak for 15 minutes. That's not too bad, is it? Well, let me tell you. I want to thank the committee. I want to thank Larry, Jenny, and especially Chris and Lisa. It was an experience last night. They entertained me last night. It was pretty interesting. This was after I got my directions from coming up from Route 81 from Winchester. And I made it up here from Kernersville, North Carolina in 4 hours. I thought I was really doing good. Until I got on 522. And then I got off on 147. No, there is no 147. That's what was Chris's directions. Get off at 147. So I just kept driving on 522. I went 18 miles. I was 18 miles to, where was I? Up to 70. So then I turned around. I come all the way back down to 127. And then I get on 127, and there's a detour 2 miles into 127. And when you get on the detour, wonderful mountains of, I guess it was West Virginia at that point. I don't even know. You know, you go on this detour, and you go around this little corner, and you come out, and there's no more 127. And so I, you know, being the great guy that I am with my cell phone, I whip open my cell phone. And I discovered the wonderful thing about wonderful wild and wild West Virginia. There ain't no cells around here, man. There ain't no cells. So, you know, I want to talk about gratitude, you know. Gratitude was seeing the bars come up on your phone, you know what I mean? So I finally made it here, and guess what? It was 2 hours later. So it was a 6-hour trip up here, which should have really taken me about 45 minutes. But anyway, I am grateful. And last night we had a nice meal, enjoyed some fellowship, went up to the Frostburg meeting. It was a great meeting, and seen the Baltimore people, seen some familiar faces, which was great. And the interesting thing was, afterwards we went out for ice cream. And they took me to the, I guess what is the most, or the greatest hot spot in all of Cumberland, the Dairy Queen. That was pretty good, you know. A lot of drunks there, you know. Anyway. But this is a gratitude breakfast, and gratitude is what it's all about. And, you know, I really need to, and I get serious. And sometimes I get too serious. So if I do, just turn around and holler at me and say, Jack, lighten up, you know what I mean? But I take this program very seriously because it was a life-saving program for me. And the deal is this, is that I first of all need to thank my higher power, who I call God, and then I need to thank the program of Alcoholics Anonymous for keeping me sober today. And then I got to thank every one of you for keeping me sober today. And you know, driving those windy roads and coming up from Kernersville yesterday was interesting because it gives you time to reflect. Whenever you talk in front of a group of Alcoholics Anonymous, you always, kind of want to think about what you're going to say, you know. And so yesterday morning before I left, I got on my knees like I do every morning because I was taught that by my sponsor. He always tells me that when I'm on my knees, I know where the drunk is and I know where God is. I got on my knees and I said, God, help me. Remove the fear from me. Because fear ruled my life, all my life. And you know what? Today, it still rules my life. When I thought about standing up here and sharing my story and talking to y'all, I had a lot of fear in my heart. You know? And all those fears come back, those fears of acceptance, of how you'll like me and how you'll hear me and all that other stuff. And I asked God to put His blanket around me when I stood up here today. So you know that for me, that's how I work the program of AA. It's as simple as that. Now, how I got here, that was another story. Coming up from 81, I'm thinking about, I used to go to school in West Virginia. I used to go to school in Salem College. Anybody know where Salem College is? Yeah, that was back in 1971. And I'll tell you a little bit about my life. My life started, the unmanageability in my life was always there. When I was young, and all this stuff that I talked to you about today is all retrospect. All retrospect. I really, I don't have anything original, folks. Everything I say today, I was told by you folks in this room, or I read it in the big book. And I can't quote the big book verbatim. But, my life, when I started out, when I was young, we were just talking about a friend of mine that came up to hear me this morning. Mark and I were talking that, I never, ever felt right, even as a child. and as I was growing up, I never felt right. I never felt like I fit in. I was like the guy that was never picked on the playground. And I was a little guy. I wasn't that big. I'm still not that big, except I'm growing out this way. But I never felt like I fit in. And when I look back after I did my 4th and 5th, and you'll hear me talk a lot about my 4th and 5th, when I look back, I see those little, I guess you'd call them innuendos or things about growing up, that basically that was the start of my alcoholism, because I craved to fit in. I craved for people to like me and to look at me, because I wanted to be accepted. And I didn't drink until I went to college, folks. I like to share that I'm a fairly high bottom drunk. I didn't have to go all the way to the bottom of the elevator. I got off pretty early, thank God. But it doesn't mean that I didn't earn my seat here. But what happened basically is that for a good part of my life, I grew up in a great family. My parents didn't drink. Nobody in my family was alcoholic, but I had a workaholic dad. And when it comes to alcoholic or alcoholic or whatever you want to call it, the isms, it doesn't really matter. It could be gambling, it could be anything. I never saw my father. He worked, slept 4 hours a day. But the one thing he did for me was he made every decision in my life for me. And as a child, it was impressionable. I let him make every decision in my life. So subsequently, what happened is later on, coming into my adulthood, I could not make a decision. I had all my decisions made for me. And I say this because, hopefully you'll understand when, in June of 1971, when I went off to college, my parents dropped me off at Salem College, Salem, West Virginia. And I was left alone. And when that car door shut and Mom and Dad drove away, I had the greatest fear in my life that I've ever had. I didn't know how to function. I wasn't prepared. I didn't know what to do. And all I know is I had that same sinking feeling that I had when I was on the playgrounds and when I was trying to fit in with everybody else. And then the thing that started me into this life of alcoholism came, and that was a young gentleman walking down the street. And this is no lie, I could see the taillights of the Ford going out of view. And I knew my mother was crying. And this guy comes walking down, and he says, "Hey, man, how you doing?" I said, "I'm fine. My name's Jack. My name's Greg." I said, "Oh, that's great." I said, "You here for the summer?" "Yeah, I'm here for the summer." "Hey, come on, let's go have some fun." I said, "Okay." I was a dumb, naive city kid. I didn't know too much. Well, we go off, and next thing you know, he's handing me a joint. And I don't talk about drugs too much, but that was it. And I had never tried it. I never knew what it was going to do, really. And inside of 3 weeks, I was doing acid. I was doing coke. And you want to talk about the epitome of self-will run riot, that was me. That was me. And boy, I'll tell you what, as soon as I started doing all the drugs, the first thing I did was go down to the pub at night, and we'd drink ourselves silly after that. And you know what? I found out that I like drinking better than I like drugs, even though alcohol is a drug. And you know what happened? As soon as I started drinking, I started fitting in. Man, I got good looking. I lost all that fear. There was no fear in me anymore. I got accepted. People started to love me, or what I thought loved me. And that's how I drank for the rest of my life. It's as simple as that. Because when I drank, I got acceptance. And the other thing was it would remove the fear from my life. And don't ask me why I guess it's the alcoholic mind. I guess it's the alcoholism is created so much fear in me. My life created fear, and then the alcohol took care of it. It quenched it. And I went through a series of things in my life, incidences and coincidences that I could talk to you. I could talk to you for the next 5 hours on. But just some highlights of things that happened to me and the reason why I continue to drink is that I got married. I got married my last year in college. I shouldn't have gotten married my last year in college. And I was fearful to not say no, because I had dated this girl for a long time, and it was almost as if, boom, we were going to get married. And all of a sudden, she got pregnant. You want to talk about fear, folks? 20 years old, scared to death, never studied in college. I got through college, and don't ask me how I got through college. Do not ask me, because I can't remember it. But I did. I graduated at 2.74. Something that I'm not real proud of, you know what I mean? But the thing is I got through, you know, and when I got married, she got pregnant, and I got some more fear in me, because I didn't know what to do. I had the fear of responsibility. I had the fear of just a child, of raising a child. I didn't know what to do, folks. I was scared to death. And the only thing that would quench that fear is that drink. And when I drank, man, the world went away. God, what a feeling. Now, I disguised it as partying, that word. We party a lot. And I made excuses for partying all the time. You know, let's go party, let's have a good time. But unmanageability. And I didn't see it, I was blind. And we had my son. And this is where some of my four-step comes in is, you know, I wasn't there. I was out drinking that night because I had to work. I just thought I was a nice guy who drank too much, you know. But what happened was we progressed, and it started to show him, you know, immediately that life was unmanageable. So we got divorced. And then I met the greatest enabler of my life. I met another drunk who I fell in love with, my wife. She's not here, so I can say all I want to today. She won't say anything. But I met my wife in a bar on Route 1 in Pendle in Philadelphia, a little bar called Mr. T's. And it was great. She shot pool and drank VO and could drink me under the table. And you want to talk about instant love. I mean, it was like, boom. I said, this is the girl I'm going to marry. Man, this is the girl I'm going to marry. And I did. Well, this precipitated the first geographic cure because, see, I had gotten a job and a career that was quite nice. And I didn't work at it. My whole MO all my life, because of my dad making decisions for me and stuff, was I always took the easier, softer way. And that's prevalent in my entire life, the easier, softer way. I didn't really work hard. And I'm ashamed to say it. I'm not ashamed today because now I work hard and I do what's right. But back then and for many, many years, I kind of just did enough to get by, so that it didn't interfere with my drinking. You know? And that's why I never drank during the day too much. I drank in the late afternoon right into the early morning. Because if I drank during the day, I couldn't function, I couldn't do the things I did just to get by so that I could get a paycheck. And I could support that son, and I could pay those child support payments and all that other stuff. But the thing is I just, you know, I absolutely took the easier, softer way. And when I met Barb down in Route 1 in Pendle, man, that was a blessing. Because there was nobody to harass me. She didn't say, stop smoking, you smoke too much, you drink too much, you know, all that stuff. I met the greatest enabler of my life. Now, she's alcoholic, and I can say that because she gives me permission to say that. And she's in this program, too. But the deal is that when you have two people that enable each other, it's a sick relationship. It is a real sick relationship. And let me tell you, folks, we took it. You know, we took it to the max. But the deal was this, is in my work, in the second year of my work, I was already starting to show signs of failure. You know, and as funny as it is for me to stand here and say that I had this fear, and the fear, you know, of losing things and the fear of not gaining things, I also, you know, had the fear of failure. So my MO was to do just enough work to get by so that I didn't fail, but I could still enjoy the parties and make the excuses to have the parties and to drink. But the underlying cause was always that fear, that self-centered fear. But we made a geographic cure, and then there's 3 geographic cures that happened in my life. The first one was to Florida, and that was to escape my ex-wife, to escape the responsibility of having to even remotely be involved raising with my son, which I was scared to death of. And the other was that they were catching up to me at work. I wasn't selling enough. So I thought, well, geez, I know what I'll do. I'll just take a new territory, and they'll give me another year's worth of grace period to get used to your territory. You know, in sales, they do that. They don't really bug you for about a year because they know you're getting used to your territory. So I used that as an MO, and we went down to Florida. And let me tell you, I remember driving into Florida, And you talk about geographic cures. I remember driving into Florida, saying to my wife, listen to John Denver. God, don't know, ask me why. But anyway, listen to John Denver. And I can remember this saying, honey, guess what? And we weren't married at the time. I said, honey, this is going to be different down here. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to get crazy. We're going to meet the right people. We're going to all this stuff. And inside of about 3.5 months, I wasn't getting out of bed in the morning until 9:30, 10 o'clock. I was traveling. I'd leave on a Sunday afternoon, go out to Oppen, Enterprise, Alabama, and Dothan, Alabama, and I was self-will run riot because I wasn't married yet either. That's part of my 4-step. I had a little bit of moral decay. Y'all know what that is? Y'all know what moral decay is back there? Hey. Well, that's what I had. I'm not proud of that. I'm not proud of that. And I share that only because, that's the sickness that we have, that I have. And, I just continued. I continued. And guess what happened, folks? With the craziness and the drinking and not doing what I was supposed to do and not, every time the responsibility would get on me, I'd just drink it away. And you can't keep doing that. So a company comes to me and says, hey, guess what they do with an underachiever? Tell me. They promote you. Right? Don't want to fire you. You're a good candidate. There's a little something wrong with you. Well, that's what they did. They promoted me. And I did my second geographical cure to Dayton, Ohio. And in Dayton, Ohio, I don't know what it is about me, but I think I'm a drunk magnet. Because I was sitting, and we lived our dream. Let me tell you, folks, I'm not telling you that alcohol and drinking was all that bad. I mean, we had a great time, man. These years are good times and partying and ba-da-da-da-da. I hadn't killed anybody yet, But the deal was I bought 10 acres of land because in Ohio you could afford 10 acres. It's kind of like out here, land gets a little cheaper. It's not like trying to buy an acre in D.C. And we raised horses. And I thought I was a bigwig, man, because I had arrived. I had arrived. And I hadn't had to work for it. So therefore what I did was, I became this great entrepreneur horse person. I had 10-acre farmette, And, my ego just took off, and I never had to work for this. So it started working, and I started finding out that if I could embellish a little bit, that people started to believe me, especially you all drunks. When you drank with me, man, you just sapped that shit up. I mean, I loved it. It was great, So what happened was I started to add that to my M.O. I started to add that to my M.O. And the more I drank, the easier it became to tell you all that kind of stuff. But I had these horses and all this other stuff, and and they started flying me around all over the place to do different things, to hire people. Actually, it was really scary. I'd drink all night long and then have an interview at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning with a person for breakfast. Man, you want to talk about sick? I'm asking them questions. I'm doing this targeted selection thing. And I'm looking at it. And I'm about to hire somebody that's going to make $100,000 a year with the company. Talk about responsibility. So, and I don't know if I drank because that scared the hell out of me or what, but all I can tell you is that, I guess I made some good hires because we got the percentage of turnover down. When I worked and I concentrated and I focused, I was a pretty damn good guy. I wasn't all that bad. And I learned that as I was getting sober too, that I'm not a bad person trying to get better. I'm a sick person trying to get weller, But the good thing is that the corporation, as they took me in, I used to do a lot of traveling, and when I'd come home, I was on the floor with all the vice presidents and presidents and stuff like that. Boy, that feeds your ego, man. You're feeling good. Even though I put it in my resume too that I was a regional manager, and hell, that wasn't even my title. I was a damn administrative assistant. And I put that in my resume and all this crap. So all it is ego building stuff. And, the fodder for it all is my alcohol. It just made me be able to do it. And the problem is, the long and short of this whole thing is the problem is I started living the lie. And I started living the lie. And I don't mean just lightly. I became those things. In fact, there was a guy there at that corporation that used to say, hey, Jack, you're living the dream. LTD in it, he used to say, living the dream. And I used to suck that up because that's what I thought I was doing. But, getting back to that drunk magnet, the day that I arrived in Dayton, Ohio, and they brought the horses up, this guy comes up the drive. His name's Kenny. And let me tell you, he became my drinking buddy for the next 3.5 years. And great guy, I love him like a brother. He just got done with a bout of cancer, and he's semi-sober today, I guess I'd call it. He's not in the program, but he doesn't drink as much because he can't anymore. He's got bladder cancer. There by the grace of God go I. But during this whole spell out in Ohio, I'd had bouts with physical ailments that I went and had a liver scan done. Dr. Oswald would look down at you and say, "Jack, you see this right here? That's a normal-sized liver. I'm going to do this overlay here. You look at this." He'd show me, and, my liver's sitting down here, and the normal liver's right here, I'd say, "Oh, okay." He said, "I think you ought to quit drinking." Okay, I'd go out, and I always share that instead of drinking 12 ounces, I'd go to a 12-pack of 16 ounces. Because that was almost a case, And just a taller version made it easier to go down, But, that's the insidiousness of the disease. That's the insidiousness of the disease. And it started to happen on that VP floor, is that in the mornings I'd go to grab coffee, and we had this coffee machine. And, all the VPs and the president would stand there, and they'd be talking, blah, 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 blah. And I'd be getting my cup out of the machine like this. And they'd say, "You were down the Marriott last night again." And, I'd kind of shy my head down and say, "Well, yeah, you told me to take that person down there and entertain him." And, I got the name of the entertainer. I became the entertainer for the floor, And anybody wanted to go to happy hour, see Jack. But I didn't have a problem. I didn't have a problem with alcohol at all. But in the meantime, I wasn't doing my job either. And I decided that, I got passed over for promotion only 6 months after I got there. Talk about attitude. In 6 months, they passed me over for promotion, and guess what I did? I copped an attitude. I copped a resentment. And what do resentments do to a drunk? Get you drunk. Makes you drink more. It was all their damn fault. All your fault. And so I decided that I was going to go back out. I was going to go out and go back into sales. And I made my third and final geographical cure. And that was to the Washington, D.C. area, Maryland area. And this is how sick I was. This whole time I was still drinking. Life's unmanageable. I'm figuring that the guy that I was going to take his place had made quite a bit of money. My sick thinking said to me that if I just make half the amount of money that he made, I'd be okay. And I could slide by, and I could go in there. And the other thing is I could go see my son because he was closer now. So I was like killing two birds with one stone. I was going to meet the family obligation, and I was going to, prolong my longevity with the company I worked for. And you know what? I was in a survival mode, and I don't know if you all know what that's like. Anybody here been in a survival mode? Well, I was in a survival mode for a long, 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 long time. And I was damn good at it. I could survive. I knew exactly what I needed to do to get by. And, you want to talk about, even the disease is cunning, baffling, powerful, but, man, I was even more. I was cunning, baffling, and powerful. Because I could do everything. I could literally know exactly where, how much to push, how many expense accounts not to turn in, what to turn in on the expense accounts, all this stuff, just so that I could maintain my party atmosphere. And give me an excuse to party, that was easy. Give me an excuse to party. Didn't matter whether it was a nasty, good thing, bad thing, it didn't matter. It was an opportunity to party. Somebody's funeral, we'll party, that's a good time, Wake, I like wakes, But anyway, well, what happens is I get out here, and in less than a year and a half, I go right back. And I remember coming into Maryland saying the same thing. "Honey, it's going to be really different this time. It's going to be really different this time. I'm not going to drink as much. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that." All that crap. And it didn't take long. I was right back into it. I found my Holiday Inn in Gaithersburg was my favorite place to drink. I found that immediately. That was right up from the apartment. And then we finally got a house. And guess what? I found a house, and one of the criteria that we liked about the house was it was close to the American Legion. 75-cent drafts, man. Come on. 50-cent shots. Come on. What an ideal location. Location, man. And I was sitting there, and the good thing was it was 70 crawls from their parking lot to my back park deck. I crawl up the back if I had to, because the cops used to sit there at the pumping station right at the corner. And they used to watch everybody come out of the Legion, man. They try to catch it. But anyway, what happens is, that my life starts to implode. It starts to implode, and I go back to the same MO. I go back to sleeping in the morning, not getting up. And I didn't have a boss. My boss was 375 miles away. And my sales are terrible, but I know that I have at least a year's worth of grace period. So I used that year's worth of grace period to learn about Washington, D.C. and all the great things that you could do in Washington, D.C. And, you know, the sickness, and I'll tell you one little story that shows the sickness. I had to go back out to sales school in Dayton, Ohio. Here I am, the great, had to go back to sales school because I went back out into sales. And what happens is I'm out there and I partied for literally 2 weeks. And when I say party, it was a non-stop, not eat, you know, go to the cafeteria, pick out the fruit, because that was the only thing I could swallow, and drink. And I drank away that fear again. Because you know why? When you're in sales school, you have to prove yourself in front of your peers. Let me tell you, folks, that's tough when they're videoing you. And they got a video camera on you, and you got to prove after 18 years in the sales business that you couldn't sell your way out of a wet paper bag. And you had to fake it. You know, and sitting there day in and day out listening and having to produce in front of your peers, shaking like a leaf. The greatest relief was that first beer, and then they had a hospitality suite. That was the worst thing they could have had. They had a hospitality suite that had all the free booze you wanted, you know. And what happened is I came driving home, and the reason why it's so ironic, I was living in Gaithersburg at the time in an apartment because we sold the farm. We didn't know where we wanted to move. Turned around, and when I hit not Morgantown, I'm trying to think of it, outside of Hagerstown. I hit Hagerstown. I was so depleted physically that I started getting tunnel vision coming down off the hill from the mountain on Route 70. And I thought my heart started palpitating. I started sweating, broke out in cold sweats. I thought I was having a freaking heart attack. I thought I was going to die. And I literally, to this day, I pulled off the road, pulled into the state police barracks right off the road. It's right up by the Maryland Correction Institute because we used to go there a lot. I pulled in that police barracks and I shut the door and I got up to the door and I walked in, I knocked on the big plexiglass window and I said, I think I'm dying. That's how scared I was. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to turn. Everything was just closing in on me, my pins and needles. Guess what I had, folks? Doctor told me I was dehydrated, depleted, lack of sleep, and I had an anxiety attack. So all I had was a freaking anxiety attack. But you know what? I put my wife through that worst phone call in the world. They called her and said, we think your husband's had a heart attack. He's up in the hospital. You know, talk about mental anguish that we caused, that I caused. You know. But that's, you know, sales started catching up with me again. So but I had nowhere to turn. This time, the alcohol wasn't working. As much as I drank, I couldn't extend another. I ran out of options is really what happened, folks. I ran out of options. I couldn't scheme anymore. I couldn't fake anybody out anymore. And all of a sudden, my world started to implode. It didn't explode, it imploded. Everything come down on me. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. And then the thing that happened that probably was the catalyst was a good friend of mine who became my boss called me, said to me, Jack, I want to meet you. Come up, we're talking. He says to me, buddy, he said, the other night you and I got drunk on a sales call, after a sales call, and he said, you know what? He said, it was great. He said, but during that conversation you said to me, the only way that Reynolds and Reynolds would fire me would get rid of me would be to fire me. And I told my boss this. But it was off the record, folks. Come on. We were having fun. This was after hours, you know? Well, the next thing you know, he called me down to the Holiday Inn. He said, Jack, you got 90 days. And when I walked out of that room, that's when my life started to implode. Now, that doesn't sound like much. But I'm standing here today to tell you that rocked my world because I had nothing to fall back on. I had nowhere to go. All the options had run out. Alcohol had stopped working. That was it, man. That was it. And I said, God help me. And I went into a rehab because I couldn't stop drinking. I had tried numerous times, but I couldn't stop drinking. Now, how it is today, We don't have enough time today. We don't have enough time today for me to stand here and give you the gratitude list that I got in my heart. I was sharing earlier with Frank and a couple other people that, today, I got sober after the second time. I had to do a little bit more experimentation after that 30 days. I went to a ball game. I was interviewing for a sponsor when I came in. They told me in rehab, go out and interview for sponsors. Look for somebody that's close to you that, you might be able to relate to. So I went shopping for a sponsor in meetings. And one night, a young lady came up to me and says, you might want to get that guy over there to be your sponsor. I said, yeah, well, I'll talk to him next week. I'll get him. In the meantime, I got some tickets to a ball game. Now, I don't necessarily go to ball games all the time, but what happened is I went to the ball game. Before we went to the ball game, we went to Hooters. When I went to the bathroom, came back out of the bathroom, and I was in front of one of my peers at work. And after being 29 days or 30 days in a rehab, and everybody in the rehab telling me not to go to the game because that's a slippery place, not to go to the game, it's a slippery place. Somebody said, if I had a drawer full of snakes here, would you stick your hand in it? And I said, hell no. He said, I don't think you ought to go to the ball game. Well, I disavowed his knowledge, even though I had been sober 20-some years. And I went to the ball game, but at Hooters, I come back out of the bathroom, and there's these 2 tall glasses of beer sitting there. And I bet you in a nanosecond they were down, and I never even thought about it. And then I did the next thing that all alcoholics do. I said, man, I screwed it up royally. I might as well screw it up big time. And I had gone to this rehab. My wife had supported me. She moved the furniture. You know how they tell you to move the furniture so that you're not sitting in the same place in front of the TV and you're not drinking the same, no beverages in the house except tea and all that crap. And I went to that ball game, and unbelievably, it had a rain delay, so they even gave us more time to drink. I went through all the money in my pocket. We had an aisle full of Busch beer cans. We left there. I drove the guy back to his car. I proceeded to drive to the Legion and went to an ATM, got another $60 out or $50 out, and went to the Legion, closed the Legion, and went home. And went home in such a stupor that I don't even know how the hell I got home. But I can remember this because of the day that changed my life. Is that I crawled into bed that night for the last time drunk. Because as I laid in bed, what I heard was my wife crying and sobbing. And I heard her say to me, you did it again. And I didn't know what to do. There was no knot at the end of the rope, folks. There was no knot at the end of the rope. I didn't know what to do. The great and wonderful Jack, the schemer of schemers, the guy that knew everything, was reduced to nothing because I had nowhere to turn. And I laid there and I asked God to help me. Now, how He helped me is what we're sitting here for today. What we're sitting here for today. I got myself a sponsor. Actually, I got Attila the Hun, but that was besides the point. I got a sponsor that was really tough, I interviewed too damn good. You know what I mean? Ex-military guy, step Nazi. You can call him whatever you want, Step Nazi, whatever. We all joke about it. Come on, what are you talking about? But I can tell you this, that even then, for the first 6 months of this program, I did not work the program the way it should have been worked. I was going to do the easier, softer way. I was going to do the half-measure crap again. I was going to do the half-measure stuff. I'm standing there after meetings crying my heart out to the guy going, oh, my God, I'm down to my last 2 cars. Oh, my God, I don't know how I'm going to make the mortgage payment. I only have $60,000 in my 401k. And he's standing there telling me about how when he was getting sober, he was bitching and moaning to his sponsor about his little daughter not having sneakers, having holes in her sneaker. And his sponsor said to him, does she have sneakers on her feet? Then shut up and go to a meeting. That's the kind of way I got sponsored, That's the way I got sponsored. The thing that I'm most grateful for is that God gave me my sponsor. I didn't pick my sponsor. God gave me my sponsor. He gave me this program. But I didn't know God for about the first 6, 8, 10 months of this program. I didn't know God. He knew me, I know that. I didn't know God. I had that God from childhood, that kind of thing. And I didn't have faith. I didn't have any faith. But y'all told me to keep coming back, do the things that I do, and you might have a chance of staying sober, and that's what I did. That's what I did. I worked the first step. I found on the second step that I'm not powerful anymore. It's not me. I can't tell you that in that second step I found God right away because I don't know. I don't think I did. All I know is that I knew that it wasn't me, and I kept getting told that. kept getting told it, How do I find a power greater than myself? Don't worry about it. It's not you. Group of drunks. It doesn't matter what you do. Just know that it ain't you. For me, that's how it worked. And when I got out of the driver's seat, things started happening to me. I was told to make a decision. I was told about the 3 frogs on the log, make the decision. Because I was going to, do the analysis by paralysis routine, all that stuff. And you know what, folks? You listen to me for the last 4 minutes that I talked about at the beginning of this program. From that point to this day, it's all gratitude. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where it's at. It doesn't matter what form it comes in, whether it's ugly, nasty, or good, or bad. For me, it's gratitude. Today, gratitude is even being able to understand somebody that's angry at me and not blowing up and getting crazy. That's nasty. I don't want somebody mad at me. But guess what? Today I can handle somebody calling me a name or looking at me wrong or hating me. You can hate me. Today I don't have to worry about it. So it's all gratitude. Everything that I did in this program, and I didn't do it. All it was suggestions from you all. And finding a faith that worked. We were talking about that this morning again, too. It's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, there's so many things you could talk about, but I guess faith would be probably the biggest one for me. Because when I found that I wasn't the power, and somebody turned around to me and suggested that I make a decision to turn the care of my life and my will over to that. I didn't have to abandon myself and take my whole psyche out. But I could understand that. I'm a pretty visual person. And if you're a visual person in this room, you can visualize all the steps. You can visualize all the steps pretty easy. But what happens is, for me today, I worked the steps. I found a power greater than myself. I pray to God every day. And I ask Him to remove the compulsion to drink and to smoke from my life. And I thank Him for the previous day. I ask Him that I can be of service to another human being, that I have the compassion to love and to care people. That's the other gratitudes. I mean, I'm going down this list like anything. All these things have come to me because I've worked the steps of AA. Do I work them to the best of my ability? Yeah. I'm proud to say that. I work them to the best of my ability. Is that the ability for you and for you and for you? No. But I work them for the best of my ability. But I know that having a strong sponsor was the key to it. And having a faith that works was key to it. And I've had a lot of ups and downs. In fact, in my sobriety, I have probably had more rotten things happen to me in sobriety than I have all the years that I drank for 18 years. I can tell you. And the beauty of this program is being able to walk through those. Now, the first couple I walked through, I didn't do too good. I stumbled through real bad. But I can tell you that if you keep coming back, just little 24-hour increments, and keep coming back, I'm going to tell you something, folks. The damn thing works. And it's as simple as that. It works. I put my faith in a higher power. And I put faith, and they always tell you that faith is a lack of fear. Fear is a lack of faith. And faith without works is death. And that's how I found to replace that fear that I had all my life from not fitting in and the fear of responsibility. I replaced it with faith. Now, can I visualize the God that I have? No, I can't visualize Him. I used to have that picture behind in my bedroom, with God at the steering wheel, the ship, that kind of stuff. That was the God that I brought to this program. It's not the God that I have today. Because I don't conceptualize and I don't pigeonhole my God. I don't put him in a little box so that I put him here. I carry God with me. I carry my God with me all the time because you know why? It may be the only thing that keeps me from drinking someday. I have to have the portable God with me. Because I'm going to be challenged one of these days where you're not going to be here to call, my sponsor's not going to be there to call, and there's going to be a tragedy happen in my life that I'm going to have to rely on my higher power to stop me from drinking. So I want to make sure that I'm as close to him as I possibly can get. And I do that simply by praying and asking. Because if he sought, he'll come. For me, he will. Anyway. And that's the gratitudes that I have in my life. I can sit here and I can tell you right now that the promises, you want to get through your amends? I wasn't even halfway through my amends. I'm not quoting the big book. I'm telling you, I wasn't halfway through my amends when things started happening in my life. Good things started happening in my life, even with the bad things happening. I got another job. Let me tell you this. I'll back up only once. And my sponsor said never to back up. But I'll back up. I was reduced to, in my second year of sobriety, and knowing me and knowing my ego as you can hear it, I was delivering cassette newspapers in the back of a Nissan Stanza that was 10 years old, that had almost flat tires, that when I filled the back of it with all those things, all those newspapers, was almost flat to the ground. And that's where I was reduced to, was driving around and delivering those newspapers for, I think it was 4 cents a piece or 3 cents a piece. Now, that's to somebody that fell asleep under the 14th Street Bridge or lived in a Maytag box, that may not be a big deal. But it don't matter whether you're from Yale or jail. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. For me, that was the low. That was the low in my life. But thank God, because there by the grace of God go I. I didn't have to go to that elevator to the bottom floor. Because of the grace in these rooms, and the grace of my sponsor, and the grace of God, I didn't have to. I found a way that works. And I'm going to continue to work for it. And for those of you who are new in the room today, and for those of you who are older in the rooms today, it's the same thing. We were talking about the commonality of the thread. It doesn't matter. I moved from Maryland to Kernersville, North Carolina, and I thought my life was going to fall apart because I lost my family. It scared the living bejesus out of me. Here's a Yankee going down south, and I walked into that first meeting down south, and I almost fainted. I'm standing there. They're doing everything. They say amen at the end of the prayer. I'm not at the Lord's Prayer, the Serenity Prayer. And I'm like going, whoa, where am I? I'm in the Bible Belt, I'm all this other stuff. And they don't do meetings the same way as we do up here. And So I call my sponsor first night. I talk about a reaction. So the second thing he tells me is, well, he says, that and a coffee pot and 2 drunks, you can start a new meeting. Because I'm telling them, they don't have step meetings, they don't have all this stuff. So, what I'm trying to impart to you folks is that, this thing works, and it works all over the place. It may not work in the same form as we think in other areas of the country, but the gratitude, it doesn't matter where you go. You take your gratitude with you. And I don't like the meetings down there as much as I like them up here. And you'll never get that feeling, Mark and I were talking about, you'll never get that feeling that you have with that home group where you got sober. We were talking about it being like a kit glove, like putting getting in your best Barco Lounger and just sliding down and going, I'm home. I'll never get that probably down there because those are my brothers and sisters in Mount Airy. That's where I got sober. And that's where a good portion of my life, of my sober life, was led. But that's gratitude. It's gratitude to be alive today. Gratitude to see my son going to get married, who I really have gotten back involved with. I had so many sins of omission. Not commission, I had omission, where I wasn't there for him, I didn't do the things for him. I didn't pay all the child support I was supposed to pay. Now, I was graced with an intelligent son who had academic scholarships, who was going to receive a PhD, and I hadn't had to put that much money out of my pocket. And I was grateful, because I didn't know what I was going to do in order to do it, but God did for me what I couldn't do for myself. I was that son of a bee that didn't even put any money away for my kid's education, didn't put money away for him, period. And God provided for me. So do I expect my son to just come up and kiss me and love me and all that other crap? Yeah, I did. And it may not happen. It may not happen. But I am going to his wedding. I'm going to his graduation in Hooding. My sponsor and I went to his thesis, to his defense. Those are gratitudes, folks. Those are gratitudes. My 86-year-old mother gets to see me sober. Does she understand? No. She still thinks I'm just a nice kid. You drank too much, Jackie. You know. But I'm a nice kid. But folks, I'm telling you, there's nothing greater than knowing today that I can walk into a room and I can feel at home like I do today, talking to each and every one of you. And knowing that we all stay sober today, and that's all it is. It's not a big hoopla. It's common today. Now, for those of you that are new, it sounds pretty brash to say, oh, it's nothing. You will come to understand, if you stick around for a few 24 hours, that it's a greater new way of life. And for that, I have eternal gratitude. Thank you very much.